The restaurant industry is one of those that have been most hard-hit sectors as well during this pandemic, not just the informal traders sector. So much revenue was lost due to operating restrictions. So how has the increasing cost of food further exacerbated challenges faced by this industry when food is, of course, your core business? Let's speak to Wendy Alberts from the Restaurant Association of South Africa, joining me now via Zoom. Wendy, good afternoon. Wendy, please switch on your camera so we can see you. I hope you can hear me. We need to see you. We are a television station, after all, as an audiovisual medium. Wendy, can you hear me?
Thank you so much for inviting us today. How are you?
I'm fine. Can you switch on your video, please, so our viewers can see you as well? Currently, I can just hear your voice. So I mean, you have to buy food in order to prepare those wonderful things on the menus of restaurants. How are restaurants coping with the increasing food inflation?
One of the key components to running a restaurant is the liquor to food sales, which is imperative to the success of the business in evaluating those margins. So one, we've had compromised margins on the liquor side, and it doesn't give us enough margin on the food to pay our bills in totality. And then with the increased prices, it is very difficult for us to maintain the profitability matrix structure within a typical menu. So having said all of that, you know, it is a very scientific assessment when you're putting a menu together in terms of the profitability structure. So every time there are increases, there are so many components and compounded costs that become problematic for us to manage, and the reprinting of menus, etc. And then it scales back onto the affordability of the consumer on what they can also afford to eat in our restaurants. So we certainly have seen a lot of remodeling of menus. We've seen portion sizes getting smaller, and we've had to make it more affordable through the different stages of COVID to enable people to be able to eat in our establishments.
Has that remodeling of menus meant that maybe in some restaurants they've gone really to basics? You can't afford all those other fancy dishes?
Well, it's also difficult, you know, to bring imports in has been very, very complicated. We've struggled to get the difficulty in products that we would normally use and the high premium products to be able to put the menus together. So we've had to look at alternative and source alternative products. We've also had to remodel our international scope menus and our fine dining menus to that of a more local based and source more local products. And sometimes we found that more local products are actually more expensive than the imports that we've been able to bring in over the years.
So, I mean, with from what I've seen from the Household Affordability Index, from that Peter Marisbeck Economic Justice and Dignity Group, they are projecting a 10%, looking ahead, 10% increase in food inflation for the rest of 2021. That's not good news for the restaurant industry.
Absolutely not. And, you know, where we've seen the ticket spend within restaurants come down. So it definitely shows that the affordability for people to eat out has been compromised, that they've been heavily impacted through the different levels of COVID. We certainly see that there's a lot more sharing of meals and a lot more occasional eating than what there would have been on the onset, where people were learning to eat out more often because it was more affordable to eat in restaurants and what it cost you to prepare your own meal. So we can see by the behavior spend of the consumer that things have certainly changed through COVID. And we are dealing with all these different type of challenges, and we certainly are trying very hard to get the consumer back into our businesses to enjoy the meals, because it still is more affordable to eat a meal out in a restaurant than what it is for you to do the combination of product development in your own home and put that meal on your table.
Yeah, what does this mean for the industry? I mean, do you think the industry will be able to sustain itself, or you're just praying and hoping the situation might improve? And I'm asking this against the background of expected restrictions, because we are now in the third wave of the coronavirus pandemic. We're all expecting that dreaded family meeting any day soon. We've been told by Cabinet that it's coming, and there's muted restrictions that might impact, for example, on curfew times, which will mean the trading hours for restaurants will be affected.
You know, one of the key things that we've seen through the different levels of lockdown is that we cannot have a dinner time trade if the curfew has put restrictions on the industry, because it gives an inability for the consumer to actually have an enjoyable time. Coupled with that is the inability to be able to enjoy the alcohol component with the meal, which heavily impacts the profitability of what our business is about. And that is really what's put the industry into great distress. So whilst we can remodel and we can make more affordable menu pricing and menu items available for the public. It's very difficult if we don't have sufficient hours to clean our restaurants and to put the necessary trading parameters in. Would you
appeal to the National Coronavirus Command Council that's advising government about how to handle these new restrictions that we're all expecting, to be mindful of that impact that you just spoke about?
Absolutely. Our lines of communication with government are open. We've always appreciated and enjoyed the relationship that we have with the interface of government, and for them to be conclusive in their consultations with us in order to understand the business. We were no COVID experts on the onset of the coronavirus pandemic, and we certainly have seen through the stages of lockdown how we can work with government to understand the business, in particular the restaurant business, because it is one of the areas where we can control the regulations and ensure that the protocols are adhered to. The biggest concern for us is the uncontrolled spaces where the overcrowding happens, which puts the rest of the industry at risk. So we certainly have shown compliance throughout the levels of lockdown. We certainly have shown government that we will on every turn do what we need to do to protect the integrity of the industry, as well as health and safety of all the staff and the patrons that come and visit our establishments.
Okay, as we conclude, let's just go back to the main point of our discussion with you at this hour, Wendy. Food inflation, food prices not going to let up soon, according to projections into the future. A huge impact on your members. What do you do for them? What are you advising your members how to manage this situation, besides remodeling and trying to cut down on what's on the menu? What else or how else are you supporting your members in the restaurant business?
The Restaurant Association is the voice of the industry. We are here to bring compliance and all the necessary conversations and communications on how to be able to get through the difficult times of COVID. We've also worked with suppliers hand in hand to try and do pricing secure, to look at ways that we can get cheaper product sourced. We're looking at more local source products. We're looking at bringing sustainability into place. We give them ideas on how to cut food costs, where the best place is to look at food costs. We've also been looking at training and then doing implementation of better production lines. So there's many aspects that we are able to do consultation on with the different restaurateurs to enable profitability, as well as the landlord's role that they need to play in ensuring that there's sustainability, banks, insurances, and the likes, obviously, to continue talking to government on how we stay afloat through the different levels of lockdown.
Wendy Alberts, thank you very much. It's a pity here we just couldn't see you this afternoon, but we could hear you loud and clear. We apologize for that minor visual technical problems. Couldn't see Wendy Alberts there, speaking on behalf of the Restaurant Association of